book of Exodus. It's the second book of the Bible, and it picks up the storyline from the previous book, Genesis, which ended with Abraham's grandson, Jacob, leading his large family of 70 people down to Egypt. Now, Jacob's 11th son, Joseph, had been elevated to second in command over Egypt, and he had saved his whole family in a famine. And so Pharaoh, the king of Egypt, offered the family to come live there as a safe haven. And so eventually Jacob dies there in Egypt, and Joseph and all his brothers do too. About 400 years pass, and the story of the Exodus begins. Now, that name refers to the event that takes place in the first half of the book, Israel's exodus from Egypt. But the book has a second half that takes place at the foot of Mount Sinai. In this video, we'll just focus on the first half, where centuries have passed, and the Israelites were fruitful and multiplied, and they filled the land. This line is a deliberate echo back to the blessing that God gave all humanity back in the Garden of Eden. And it reminds us of the big biblical story so far. Humanity forfeited God's blessing through sin and rebellion, and so God chose Abraham's family as the vehicle through which he would restore his blessing to all the world. But the new Pharaoh does not view Israel as a blessing. He actually thinks this growing Israelite immigrant group is a threat to his power. And so just as in Genesis, humanity rebels against God's blessing, so here Pharaoh attempts to destroy the source of God's blessing, the Israelites. He brutally enslaves them in forced labor, and then he orders that all the Israelite boys be drowned in the Nile River. Now, Pharaoh, he is the worst character in the Bible so far. His kingdom epitomizes humanity's rebellion against God. Pharaoh has so redefined good and evil according to his own interests that even the murder of innocent children has become good to him. And so Egypt has become worse than Babylon from the book of Genesis. And so now Israel cries out for help against this new Babylon, and God responds. God first turns Pharaoh's evil upside down as an Israelite mother throws her boy into the Nile River, but in a basket. And so he floats safely right down into Pharaoh's own family. He's named Moses, and he grows up to eventually become the man that God will use to defeat Pharaoh's evil. In the famous story of the burning bush, God appears to Moses and commissions him to go to Pharaoh and order him to release the Israelites. And God says that he knows Pharaoh will resist, and so he will bring his judgment on Egypt in the form of plagues. Then God also says that he will harden Pharaoh's heart. And so we're introduced into the next main part of the story, the confrontation between God and Pharaoh. Now, what does this mean that God says he'll harden Pharaoh's heart? It's super important to read this section of the story really closely and in sequence. In Moses and Pharaoh's first encounter, we're told simply that Pharaoh's heart grew hard. There's no implication that God did anything. And so in response, God sends the first set of 5 plagues, each one confronting Pharaoh and one of his Egyptian gods. And each time, Moses offers a chance for Pharaoh to humble himself and to let the Israelites go. But after each plague, we're told that Pharaoh either hardened his heart or that his heart grew hard. He's doing this of his own will. And so eventually, it's with the second set of 5 plagues that we begin to hear how God hardened Pharaoh's heart. So the point of the story seems to be this. Even though God knew that Pharaoh would resist his will, God still offered him all of these chances to do the right thing. But eventually, Pharaoh's evil reaches a point of no return. I mean, even his own advisors think that he has lost his mind. And it's at that point that God takes over and bends Pharaoh's evil towards his own redemptive purposes. God lures Pharaoh into his own destruction as he saves his people, which is what happens next. With the final plague, it's the night of Passover, and God turns the tables on Pharaoh. Just as he killed the sons of the Israelites, so God will kill the firstborn in Egypt with a final plague. But unlike Pharaoh, God provides a means of escape through the blood of the Lamb. And here the story stops and introduces us in detail to the annual Israelite ritual of Passover. On the night before Israel left Egypt, they sacrificed a young, spotless lamb and painted its blood on the doorframe of their house. And when the divine plague came over Egypt, the houses covered with the blood of the lamb were passed over, and the son spared. And so every year since, the Israelites have reenacted that night to remember and to celebrate God's justice and his mercy. But Pharaoh, because of his pride and rebellion, he loses his own son. and he's compelled to finally let the Israelites go free. And so the Israelite slaves make their exodus from Egypt. But no sooner do they leave that Pharaoh changes his mind, and he gathers his army and chases after the Israelites for a final showdown. As the Israelites pass through the waters of the sea safely, Pharaoh charges towards his own destruction. The Exodus story concludes with the first song of praise in the Bible. It's called the Song of the Sea. And the final line declares that the Lord reigns as king. And then the song retells in poetry what the story of God's kingdom is all about. It's about how God is on a mission to confront evil in his world and to redeem those who are enslaved to evil. God is going to bring his people into the promised land where his divine presence will live among them. This story is what it looks like when God becomes king over his people. So after the Israelites sing their song, the story takes a sharp turn. The Israelites, they're trekking through the wilderness on their way to Mount Sinai, and they're hungry, they're thirsty, and they start criticizing Moses and God for even rescuing them. They say they long for the good old days in Egypt. I mean, it's crazy. So God graciously provides food and water for Israel in the wilderness, but these stories, they cast a dark shadow. And we begin to wonder, could it be that Israel's heart is just as we shall see? But for now, that's the first half of the book of Exodus.
Are we live? Are we live? So, that's the book of Exodus and the story of Passover. Yeah, I'm not an expert by any means when it comes to the three faces of Abraham, Judaism, Christianity, Islam. It's all a wonderful experience of discovery for me. And so I hope, let's give it up to the Bible Project. All right? So, can you BibleProject.com. I'll have to put it in the description. These guys just are really doing a great job making short, entertaining videos that talk about Exodus. And there's actually like two parts to Exodus. And so we just got to the Passover part, right? And I think that there is, in the Stars of David experience, we celebrate the diversity and inclusion that we take for granted in Hollywood. And I'm saying it was the Jewish culture who, like the Atlantic Ocean was kind of like the Red Sea, and Hollywood was sort of like Mount Sinai. Jewish people came across the Atlantic, and then through the golden age of cinema, we see these expressions of diversity and inclusion and all the things that were sort of written in the Constitution but not explicitly therefore underrepresented cultures like people of color and women. And then you see this explosion of inclusion and diversity in the golden age of cinema. And we argue here, the Stars of David experience, that without the Jewish culture, we would not be as evolved as we are today, as far as in terms of accepting other cultures and having diversity and inclusion, such an incredible part of American contemporary culture. And I also make the argument that these kids here, right? Oh yeah, there we go. Can't pink wash. Come on, man. Come on. They are worshiping false idols, just like when Moses came down and they were worshiping the golden calf. This is a golden calf. Okay. Queers for Palestine. These kids are not, this is beyond politics, beyond gender. It's like black people for the KKK or chickens for KFC. The Islamic culture does not accept gay lifestyle, alternative lifestyle, as something. Oops, I've got the wrong thing. They don't respect gender fluidity as something that is an option. They throw people off of buildings who are gay, and if you're alive, then they stone you to death, man. This is what happens in the Islamic culture. And as far as Jewish people being colonialists, this is just such a display of cognitive dissonance. You're worshiping a false idol. If you're trying to smash the Jewish culture into this white colonialist male box, it's just so sad that these kids are embarrassing themselves. The Jewish people suffered pogroms, right? And you see it in Exodus. This hate for the Hebrews were slaves, and the Pharaoh hated them. It's like, just keep making your bricks, and just was like, and these Hebrews were like, man, can we worship? And they're like, no. In fact, I'm gonna make it harder for you. You got to keep your quota and bring the straw to build these clay bricks, right? So the pogroms that we see later on, thousands of years later, sort of have their history all the way back to Exodus, all the way back to the First Testament, I believe. I'm not quite sure, but the Old Testament, New Testament, I'm still not too clear on which stories go to which book, so please forgive me. But pogroms and shtetl communities. After Jews would be persecuted, they'd end up in their own communities trying to get their bearings, and you see that in the story of Exodus, and you see the Jewish people in the desert talking, right? So Moses talks to God, he gets the 10 Commandments, and for me today, inclusion and diversity is almost has taken the place of the 10 Commandments, or it's like a religious truth for the age where we the God is dead century, right? The 20th century, 21st century, where Nietzsche said we killed God. In that framework, it's like diversity and inclusion is the new truth. That's the ultimate truth, that you cannot disrespect people because of their gender or the color of their skin or where they're from, that everybody is created equal. And we used to say in the eyes of the Lord, but today we say everybody is equal because they have inalienable rights given to them by nature or by God. And so this is sort of the new truth that was articulated, centuries ago in the Constitution and in the peasant revolt to the Magna Carta. These ideas, percolated through society, but they really bring it to the table in the golden age of Hollywood. And so that's where the Stars of David experience comes in. And in the celebration of Passover, right, we're making a comparison between the Jewish migration, running away from oppression and anti-Semitism to America, and then to Hollywood, and creating these films where you had strong women and black musicians and Jewish storytellers and gay composers, right? And so for me, like Marlene Dietrich was the Moses. She epitomed everything that she was, this gender bender quality to her. She was German, escaping, not and embraced the Jewish culture, right? So there's a story, anti-Semitic, and she was this gender bending persona, right? And so I proposed a mural for her in this DEI community, and the mural was rejected. But I was also told, DEI by a community leader. He was just like, you'll never get this image on a wall in this town. DEI he said, she's too gorgeous, she's too beautiful, and worst of all, the image of Marlene Dietrich that you're proposing is way too white. DEI, this community leader told me, is all about being anti-white, and this colonialist white male thing is the devil, in today's sort of thing, and inclusion and diversity is the truth, and so we kind of see the celebration of diversity and inclusion just explode in the early days of cinema. And so this is a little video I did after my can we watch this on YouTube? After my proposal was rejected, I was like, okay, we see here why Dietrich was just such incredible force for the diversity and inclusion in the LGBTQ sensibilities and the power of strong women in film. So let's take a look. Let's see, here we go.
Nothing I'll do.
Alrighty then. So, let me know what you think about this idea that I'm proposing in the story of Exodus. Hebrews were persecuted, then were cast into the desert by the Pharaoh. The Pharaoh chased them. They crossed the Red Sea. Red Sea parted, and then as they made it to the other bank of the river, the Pharaoh was still in the middle of the river which was parted, but then the river collapsed on the Pharaoh, killing him and his army, and then they go into the desert, and they base their camp at the foot of Mount Sinai. Moses goes up Mount Sinai, talks to God, and then receives the 10 Commandments. All right? So I'm making the proposition that history, it may not repeat exactly, but it does have a tendency to rhyme. So here we are. We're coming into modernity. In the 1860s, we have our Civil War. The British start to move away from the colonial control of India and North Africa. France has a control of Algeria and North Africa. They begin to relinquish their control, like the stage is set up. So the colonialism starts to recede. World War I, World War II happen. Then you have the Jewish people who are persecuted and attacked, and then they migrate just like they did in Israel. Instead of the Red Sea, we see Jewish immigration across the Atlantic Ocean. Right now to Hollywood is kind of like a new Mount Sinai, and the golden age of cinema is really the a new way of looking at the world, with strong, wonderful, powerful women, black actors, black musicians, different cultures on the screen, gay, all types of people involved in the golden age of cinema, which is endemic to the Jewish culture, who was able to go into communities and get along with tribes that were warring, like people that hated each other. Jewish people be like, hey man, whatever, what's up? Can we do business? Can we work together? Oh, I can do business with you. I can do, everything's cool. I don't got a grudge, that I'm bringing to the table from some sort of tribal nightmare thing, right? And then that's how the Hebrews and the Jewish history, that's how this culture learned to survive. And it's important to us to be the adults in the room and to let these kids know your argument it's not a political or a gender thing. It's just corrupt on a basis of logic. Just from a point of simple cognitive dissonance. It's just you're inventing something that doesn't exist. All right, you're inventing this Muslim culture that embraces the LGBTQ community. The Muslim culture is rabidly opposed to the LGBTQ community. They throw gays and alternative people with alternative lifestyles off of buildings, and if they don't die, they stone them to death. So it's like queer, it's like black people for the KKK or chickens for KFC. It's just completely ridiculous. And so it's up to us to not call these kids stupid, right? You never get anywhere being, accusatory or pointing fingers. It's important to celebrate, right? And so that's what we're doing here at the Stars of David experience. And and so we did some painting yesterday together. And so by painting portraits of stars, we're sort of creating our own little glamour culture, right? So we can have exhibitions and have gatherings where we display these portraits, and I'm selling a print collection, and to show up, red, and show by example how cool, this part of our history was and how important it was. Doesn't want to connect. Anyways, so that's just I'm really interested to hear what you think about this idea of, the story of Exodus in the Bible, of Jewish people coming to America, fleeing Nazism, fleeing anti-Semitism, and then just like the Hebrews received the Word of God through the Ten Commandments, Hollywood sort of set up a new way, a new truth, a way where women were strong and different cultures were respected, and music, jazz music and blues and Carmen Miranda, right, Latin music, and so all these cultures, different music was celebrated on the silver screen. And our argument is that could never, ever have happened with Puritan Christian money or Islamic fundamentalist executive producers. It's unique to the American Jewish culture, and we should celebrate, for whatever problems there are in the world, whether Israel war, Ukraine war is horrible anyway around. That does not diminish what the Jewish culture brought to the world through the golden age of the cinema. And it's important that we be the adults in the room, and we say, yeah, of course you don't like war. Of course you don't like the Israeli war and these poor Palestinian kids and women and families who had nothing to do with any of this are being killed and as collateral damage. It's happening in Ukraine. It's happening in Gaza. But you can't be going around, let's exterminate the river to the sea. Come on. Let's exterminate the white colonialists because they're bad in favor of, that doesn't work. It's intellectually cognitive dissonances of the ultimate type there. All right. So that's just a quick shout out. We'll probably be doing more broadcasts on this subject because I think it's a fascinating one. All right. Thanks for watching. let me know what you think. I'm really interested to hear what your ideas are on this parallel between the Exodus of thousands of years ago and the Exodus from Europe to America, and any relations, any similarities we can explore between the two. All right, thanks again. We'll see you next time.